Well, here we are. Well, actually, here I am. I'm going out fishing today by myself. We're on one of the Great Lakes. You know, I love Great Lakes fishing. Doesn't matter if it's Erie, Green Bay, Lake Huron. You're always dealing with big fish. The reward is always generally big at the end of your line. And so we're gonna go out today fishing. It doesn't matter if I'm in a tournament or if I'm just out fun fishing. I just like to go fishing and let the day tell me what I should do. A lot of times you're not open-minded to what your electronics are showing you, what the weather is telling you to do, and obviously what the fish really want. And so we're gonna go out there fishing. I think we're gonna pull some boards to cover some water and just see where it takes me. But I hope you join me as I try to show you the next bite.
Just looking for the next bite.
Korey is arguably one of the best anglers to ever pull spinners on the Great Lakes. When an opportunity to get in the boat with him is given, you jump aboard and become a fly on the wall.
So right now it's August time frame. You know, it doesn't matter if it's big bodies of water or like the Great Lakes like we're on today. It's the middle of summer, it's the peak of summer, the water's the warmest. It's about 74 degrees right now. But one thing that's always important, doesn't matter if it's just a big body of water like Lake of the Woods or any of the Great Lakes, current is a big key to summertime success, especially on these big bodies of water or the Great Lakes especially. And so what we're doing out here today on one of the Great Lakes is really looking for those high current areas, you know, those steep bluffs, and anywhere you can find that current, you can find a series of boulders, and especially the bigger the boulders, the better on a piece of structure. That's where these fish really hang out, and that's where they really hide and feed, and a lot of times that's where they live. You know, just either trolling methods to really fine tune on where these fish are relating to these pieces of structure, obviously because they can be vast. Oh yeah. Yep. Wasn't sure if that was the bottom or, you know, trolling around these big boulders and stuff, sometimes it's deceiving whether or not you're hooked on a big rock, because I'm trying to get them, you know, close to bottom, but when there's 5, 6 foot, 8 foot rocks coming off the bottom, and sometimes you're gonna run into them occasionally, and it's always fun by yourself trying to orchestrate everything. There we go. It always makes it a little more difficult, but at the same time, it makes it way more fun doing this by yourself. There's just something about that rush trying to make it all happen. And this is a nice looking fish here. You know, obviously one of those Great Lakes, you know, just gold and pristine fish. Just one of those things where you can get aggressive with them, but one thing I like to do a lot of times is troll, because there's such vast bodies of water here. It just makes it so much easier covering water trying to find these fish. Let's get her back.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Schaefer's Specialized Lubricants. Putting equipment first. Tracker Boats. Fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley. Catch more fish. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. Closed captioning for the next bite is provided by Precision Trolling Data, the authority for crankbait diving depth information. No matter where you're pulling spinners, depth control is very important. Korey has perfected his spinner trolling system, keeping depth control a top priority.
So when it comes to my crawler harness setups, One thing I really like to do is tie my own. For one, I can pick the components that go into them, and also I can match the lead length for my rod length. And I'm a guy that likes the shorter trolling rod. This is a 7-foot trolling rod, and I like to create my lead length for my spinner to basically be compact enough where I can easily store it on my reel or somewhere on my rod, but not have the weight jammed up into the eyelets. And so this is about a 5-foot leader here for my crawler harness. But getting down to the hook system, I almost always, anytime I can get away with it, I run a treble hook. And this is a number 8 Fusion 19 round bend treble hook, and about 4 to 3.5, 4 inches in front of it is the octopus hook. Now at either number 2, number 1 sometimes, depending on the fish size. But I like to basically keep that a little bit shorter, a little more compact. Moving up to the beads, I like number 6mm beads most of the time. But one thing that's really important with beads is I like to keep in mind and have multiple choices of beads, numbers, if it's 6, 7 beads or if it's 8 or 9 beads, because I want to keep in mind the blade that I'm using. This is a number 5 Colorado blade here. It's a little bit shorter. And so that 6, number 7 maybe beads is enough to keep that blade above the hook. The last thing I want is to run a number 4, number 5 willow blade on only maybe 6 beads, because now that hook is going to cover my front octopus hook. Obviously not help me with hookup ratio, so I want to run those willow blades on maybe a 7 to a 9, 8, 9, number 6mm beads. I always have a quick change clevis on here, makes changing blades very easy. So overall, that's my spinner setup, and that's just one thing I like to do is just tie my own. That way, you know, I have it best of both worlds for components and also matching my rod length. It's always a good sign when you can see that board just almost straight vertical. Starting to straighten back out here, the board is now, but this feels like a really good one. So that's one thing I like to do is always pay really close attention to what the board's doing, because I'm either going to keep my rod really low, you know, or I can move my rod to the other side if that fish starts going that way. But right now that board is straight vertical and I want to keep my rod really low. So now if I raise my rod right here, that board starts coming out of the water, which doesn't allow it to dig as much. I'm still going to keep it low all the way until I go for the grab. Now for the net grab. That's the weight. Get in there. Yeah. Oh, just another chunk. Oh man. Almost didn't think I was gonna be able to lift that one. Came off from the net. Just a chunk right there. I mean, that fish fought just straight down, digging to the other side of the boat the whole way in. But these fish are just cool no matter what they are. But it's just one of those things. With those crawler harnesses, I can really dictate the depth. And that's what I really love about them over crankbaits is I can basically hover them above the rocks. I can fish them in 10 feet of water or 20 feet of water with the same lead. Obviously, you can't do that with crankbaits, but it's one of those things where there's always the reward at the end of the line is always so great when you're fishing these Great Lakes fish. Get her back.
Total Control, presented by Power Pole. 20 years of trust, evolved from Total Boat Control.
So we're out here on this big Regency, and I've got an HDS7 here in the console. And some of you all might want to know how to, kind of move around the menus, change some of the things you're looking at, see the information you want on screen. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. So this is a full touchscreen display, so I do have multi-touch, so like you can see I can pinch to zoom on the chart, so that's really nice, just like your phone. But I also have a full keypad over here on the side as well, and I can control all kinds of things from here. I can zoom in just like I did with the pinch to zoom, but here with the buttons as well. I can move around on the chart if I want. I can mark waypoints, so if I find a specific place I want to come back to, all I have to do is tap this flag key right here and it'll let me drop a waypoint, so I can mark anywhere on the chart that I want. But if you want to switch between, like let's say you want to switch between your chart or switch between sonar or see several things at the same time, all you have to do is press this button up here. This is our Pages button. This will take you right to our home screen, and you see we got a bunch of apps pretty much again just like your phone. And all you have to do is tap whichever one you want. So if I want a full screen chart, I just hit the chart button. If I wanted to see just my sonar, I hit just the sonar button. One of the things that's a little bit hidden in here that a lot of people don't know about is if I want to just see two things like my chart and my sonar side by side, I can press and hold on my chart icon and it'll give me quick splits. So I can do chart plus any of the other functions I have with just a quick button push. So if I want to see my two side by side, that's really nice. If I wanted to do three things, like let's say if I wanted to maybe do a little bit of fishing and I wanted to see my chart and my sonar and my down scan together, I can actually build a 3-panel split. So I just press this plus, I drag in the 3 that I want, and now I've got all 3 of these functions right here. So when I click save, it'll take me straight to it. And now I can see everything that I've got right there on screen at the same time. And if I ever go back to my pages button, that setup I put will be right here in the bottom corner.
Location is everything when fishing the Great Lakes.
There's just that one little boulder pile back there where that last fish that we just caught came off of.
Korey uses side scan while trolling to reference where he's getting bites, making it easier to hone in on repeatable fish holding structure.
One thing I think that's really important when it comes to covering water is obviously trolling, but the second best thing to me, or probably more important, is side imaging. I mean, you can cover a lot of water just like trolling with side imaging. I have my scale set at 100 feet to the right and 100 feet to the left. Now, when it comes to finding those high percentage areas or big boulders or that key spot, I can find very easily with side imaging. And so what we have going on here is it looks like right now we have a bunch of small rocks on both sides of the boat. A little bit on the far side here on the left. We have a little bit of, looks like gravel or sand mixed out on the outside, about 80 to 100 feet away. What I'm looking for is differences in size of rocks. Right now it looks like there's a lot of 1 to 3 foot rocks. And each area is different. But on the Great Lakes, a lot of times, I mean, there's big rocks, 10, 20 footers or so. Actually, what we're coming up on here is something that looks a little bit better. And now, right now, we have some flat rocks that were mixed up in those broken rocks. We have some really big ones right here. It's a little bit distorted because the boat keeps drifting from these big waves. And I'm driving along them right now, but I also see to my left here, there's a lot of smooth bottom, a lot of sand, looks like some gravel mix right off this side. And no more than 60 feet away on this is big boulders. That is one of my classic spots I always look for because those big boulders are feeding areas. They're also current breaks on the Great Lakes or on big bodies of water. They can ambush the bait fish by just staging behind those out of the current. They don't use a lot of energy, but when it comes time to rest, they have a short distance to get to clean bottom, and bass and walleyes love to lay on clean bottom. And so we have this big group of big rocks. I mean, there's a majority of these look like they're at least 8 feet or bigger, and they're starting to kind of peter out now on this side. But this to me is a high percentage area. It's also a steep break line. Current's gonna be amplified against this, but using side imaging is just as important for covering water as it is for trolling. When you got short leads behind the boards, this one I think is maybe 20 back or so. Those boards tend to disappear a little bit, just because you got such a short lead. It doesn't take much for that fish to pull the board straight down versus maybe having 50, 80 feet of line where it's pulling it more back. Just like a tournament, there's always got to be chaos involved when there's fish catches. But that's what makes it fun. Here she comes. Oh, at least I thought so. Come on. Yes. There's a good one there. Oh yeah. I mean, there's one thing about fishing is there's always the excitement of finding new spots, and to me it's not always about catching fish, it's about learning things, and it's always way more exciting when you're by yourself because it's just a chaos rush. I mean, especially trying to pull planer boards and and trying to keep lines out of the bottom and net fish like this. Obviously, when you're in chaos, it makes you a better fisherman all around when you're out there with a group of buddies or you're trying to teach people, because you're gonna make mistakes. So another great fish, but let's get her back. Well, it's no secret on the Great Lakes, or I guess for me in particular, crawler harnesses are one of my favorite things to use. And you know, across the Great Lakes, they've attested for so many tournament wins. And to me, one of the biggest parts of them is just their versatility. You know, here I'm either using a 1/2 ounce or a 1 ounce weighting system. I generally prefer lighter weights because they're more speed sensitive. And so I can run the same depth, you know, running 30 feet back or 50 feet back with the same weight depending on my speed. One thing about the Great Lakes, we have zebra mussels, we have moss, we have gobies, you know, everything that's going to basically follow my bait up and take it out of play is going against me if I touch the bottom. So all I have to do if I run into trouble is use my speed on my bow mount to basically speed me up or raise those crawler harnesses up. If it's a hump, I get over top of it, I go fast. As soon as I start going back down the other side, I just continue to slow my speed down and let those baits basically follow their way back down the bottom. Now with using a lighter weight, it's more forgiving. I can speed up, it's gonna come up faster. I can also, if I'm not paying attention and I slow down too much, it's not gonna plummet right down to the bottom. But one thing that's gonna do is when I do slow down is that blade is gonna almost quit spinning and basically flutter its way back down the bottom, which is another trigger. It's no more or any different than using a glide bait or any kind of rip-in bait where you're changing that speed and changing that action of that bait frequently, and that's what triggers bites. Same thing when it comes to trolling.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Schaefer's Specialized Lubricants, putting equipment first. Tracker Boats, fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, your adventure starts here. Berkeley, catch more fish. Lowrance, find, navigate, dominate. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. Hot topics, leading information and tackling techniques to make you a better angler. Presented by Mercury.
I've run a lot of outboards in my career, and by far my favorite one is the one I run right now. That's the Mercury 400 Verado. Now, of course, I love the Verados. They're quiet. It's a 4-stroke, no smoke. There's no vibration. It's got tremendous hole shot. It's got tremendous acceleration when I'm out trying to run rough water. But what I really like about this 400 is the speed that I can get. You know, a long time ago, I talked to one of my good friends. He was a boat designer, and he said a lot of times it's your hull that limits just how fast you can go, mainly because the hull can only hold so much weight back there with the engine, or when you get to a certain speed, you can't handle the boat. It starts to chine walk and just doesn't do turns and things like that. But what I found is with the ZV21 is that I'm able to really push that envelope of speed and handling. And what I mean by that is when we first started running these ZV21s about 4 or 5 years ago, we were running 300 horse engines on them. We were getting in the high 50s for speed, a really good speed for a walleye, heavy deep V walleye boat. We bumped it up to a 350 horse and we got all the way up to that magical 60 miles an hour. The nice thing was that when this 400 came out, I was expecting to get in another mile or two because it's really hard at the top end to pick up another mile or two when you're running a boat. But what was magical about this 400 is that for some reason it just broke this hull free. It made it really perform, and I was able to get 67 miles an hour out of it on many conditions. 2 guys in the boat, half a tank of gas, all my tournament gear, going to mid to upper 60s is just tremendous. So a lot of times the hulls do limit where you can go, but with this 400 horsepower Verado and this ZV21, sky's the limit.
Learning to pull spinners from an angler like Korey is incredible. Something as simple as running your boards all on the same side of the boat to more easily control the depth of all the baits can easily be overlooked. Korey pays attention to these small details. Maximizing his time in the water comes from his tournament background, but can be applied to any day in the water.
Whoa. This one's taking some line. This fish is swimming out to the deep side. That's generally a good sign. Make him think he's in charge for a little bit, at least until we get the board off. Come on. It's all about keeping consistent pressure on him right there. And here. All right, here he comes. He's a fighter. I'm starting to wonder how big he really is. Oh, he's a good one. There we go. Oh, long and skinny. Just on the tip of the beak, right there at the treble hook. It's one thing I always like to do with crawler harnesses. If I'm nowhere near bottom or weeds, I always like to run that treble hook. And because when you stick them with that, especially in the bony mouths of these bigger fish, you can see like it's not coming off. Use that Fusion 19. I like number 8s, treble hooks. It's a little bit smaller, that way it can penetrate this bone like this one did. I mean, it's stuck in there. You want something obviously really sharp and that can really pin them in. Obviously, a treble hook is gonna hold a lot better and have more holding power. And that Fusion 19 number 8 is my favorite. Another beautiful fish here. Just a healthy chunk, but I just love the color of these Great Lakes fish. It doesn't matter where you are, other than Lake Erie, it seems like they have this really gold black look to them. But let's get her back here. This fish has got a lot of weight, but it hasn't done much since the first initial runs when I set the hook. What is this? No, it's just a giant catfish in the mouth. Sometimes you'll never know what you're gonna end up with. Obviously, you know, everyone has a goal when they go a day on the water, they're gonna target whatever species, but for me, it's usually never channel catfish, but this thing is a giant. And catching it on a glide bait on the Great Lakes, I mean, it's not something you typically expect every day or at all, but they're also fun to catch too. That thing is a chunk. Well, not the target species, but that's probably one of the biggest cats that I've caught on the Great Lakes, at least how fat he is. Yeah, he's got a lot of fight left in him yet, I think. No catfish slime on the net, sorry.